.38 pistol, I believe it will do well. Got my 32-20, 'cause it's a burning hell. Hey, hey, honey, we stayed last night. Hey, 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 honey, we stayed last night. You held tingle, and you ain't talking right. I'm gonna shoot my pistol, gonna shoot my gun. Shoot my pistol, shoot my Gatling gun. The doctors in Hot Springs sure can't help it none.
Okay, now here I am. I've just got back from Melbourne, and I've got a nice pair of boots and some Larry shirts and an armful of blues records. And the first thing I wanted to do when I got back to Brisbane was to tell the Purple Hearts to go down to Melbourne, because there was some good bands in Melbourne, but nothing as good as the Purple Hearts. So I went down the Prim Junior, which was in the Piccadilly Arcade just off Queen Street, and I'm waiting to see the manager, and in walks 2 or 3 great big burly Queensland police detectives. "What's your name?" Told them my name. "You're working?" I said, "Oh, I just got back from Melbourne." "Come along with us." So they take me to Roma Street Police Station, sit me down on a chair, and then get a razor blade, pull out my shoulder length hair, which I now have, and cut it at an angle. Now, that could have been quite a good 80s haircut, but not in the 1960s. So I can only imagine what would happen today if a 16 or 17-year-old kid was treated that way. But they could get away with anything in Queensland in the 60s. My dad knew what happened, but he was a trammy. Had he complained, he would have been bashed up and left to bleed in a toilet block somewhere. So, did it make me a good conformist little Queenslander after that? No, it did the exact opposite. To this day, I have very little tolerance for people who abuse authority. And the positive thing that came out of it was that I now felt like a fully pledged blues man, because I knew what it was like to be hated because of the way you looked and the way you thought. And it was hate. It was hate of anything different, anything that may make them think. Anyway, I took the positives out of it. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to go right back to that first day I brought home the Rolling Stones album. I got my sister's radiogram, took it in the room, started playing the Rolling Stones, and my dad walked in. Stood in front of the radiogram for about half a minute. Then looked at me and said, "Matty, what's that shit?" So Dad wasn't impressed with the Rolling Stones at all. But I certainly was, because I'm listening to blues harmonica. And my dad was a harmonica player. Our poor old dad was one of those diggers who was sent to Greece in 1940, and they were just completely ill-prepared to what was going to happen. And poor old dad was wounded in the first engagement and was back in Brisbane working on the trams by the end of 1940. So he joined concert parties. That's where he met my mum. So they were very musical. Dad was a tenor and Mum was a soprano. And Dad also was a harmonica player. He was in the Tramways harmonica band. So we had harmonicas all over the house. Never touched them. As far as I was concerned, harmonica was old man music, and I was just not interested in that. But now I'm hearing all these wonderful young British guys playing harmonica, and it sounds incredible. So I get every harmonica in the house, and I sit down in front of the records. I just can't figure out what they're doing. Who should come to the rescue but Fabulous magazine. There's an interview with Keith Ralph from the Yardbirds, and Keith Ralph says, there's only one harmonica you can play the blues on, and in America it's called a marine band. In Australia it's called an Echo Super Vamper. So the very first chance I even remember it was 14 shillings and sixpence. And that was, of course, I bought it before decimal currency, and went home, and I'd say within a month I'd worked out everything that was on the Rolling Stones album. And I remember my dad seeing the Echo Super Vamper, and he says, "Matty, it's just a toy." He was a lovely old fellow. So what I'm going to do now is show you how I pretty much taught myself to play harmonica. There was no harmonica teachers, not for blues anyway, in Australia, I can tell you that. So I got an old coat hanger. You didn't have these wonderful harmonica braces in those days. So I got an old coat hanger, bent it into shape, put it around my neck, put a few little grooves in it, and put the harmonica in, and put lots of rubber bands to keep it in place. And this is what I do. So now I'm back home after being in Melbourne, and I get a job, and there was some bikers who just lived down the road. I think his name was Eddie Johnson, and him and his little bike group would be pulling their bikes apart, BSAs, Trumpies, the odd Norton. They used to leak like anything, so they'd always be pulling them apart. And they'd also hang out at this fish shop that was in Boundary Street, just at the back of Wedge Street where I lived. And on that jukebox, no one would ever let them change the songs. They were just all old rock and roll songs, Dwayne Eddy, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis. So it was just wonderful music, and we'd be listening to that. One day a fella walks in, he's got shoulder length hair, red and black trousers, yellow and black trousers. And I start talking to him, and he's got a great knowledge of the blues. His name's Paul Johnson. Paul was an orphan, and he'd lived in foster homes and was adopted and the whole works. Didn't get on with his adopted father at all, so they'd thrown him out of the home. And he was living in a kind of a flop house, really, in Gregory Terrace. And it was sort of the last place you live before you go feral in the bush or in the park. So he was right on the edge. And we were talking about blues, and I said, I've got a great collection, so anytime you want to come round, I'll play them to you. But I'm also going to form a traditional blues band. He said, oh, I'm already in a band. And he said, why don't you come and try out with our band? And I said, well, are you sure, you know, I'm only going to play traditional blues. I'm not interested in pop music in any form. And he said, oh, look, he says, if you've got the material, we'll be happy to just play, you know, traditional blues. So I go to the first rehearsal, and we do some Jimmy Reed. So I'm the rhythm guitarist. But then he says, we'll do Got Love If You Want It by Slim Harpo, and Matt will play harmonica on it. So that's what we did. Now, after they heard me play harmonica, they said, you're in. There weren't many harmonica players around in those days, and it was pretty hard to have a traditional blues band without harmonica playing. So we practiced for about 3 weeks, and then Jimmy Brailsford, he was the guitarist, his dad Sid got us a gig. And a typical garage band, we said, oh, Sid, we can't do a gig. We've only been together for 3 weeks and we only know about 8 or 9 songs. And he said, look, do the gig and play them twice. So we went to some gig at Anala somewhere and did the gigs twice. It was on the weekend of the 14th of February 1966. So I was always paid in dollars, never pounds. So once we'd done a gig, you couldn't stop us. We wanted to play all the time. We'd do school dances. And remember, we're a traditional blues band. We weren't playing pop music. And we'd do playground halls. I remember we opened the Myers Inn shop, and Tony MacArthur was actually the DJ for the opening, and earlier he had named the band the Bay City Union. He'd been in a band called the Bay City Jazz Band. So we just wanted to play everywhere. Now, a friend of Paul Johnson's by the name of Glenn Wheatley. Now, you probably know Glenn as the John Farnham's manager, and gets up to a few other tricks from time to time. But anyway, he's running a little club called the St. George Club. It had been at a few venues, and they'd had the Purple Hearts as the main band. And now the Purple Hearts were going to Melbourne, or I thought on my recommendation, but they convinced me later that they were going anyway. So the Purple Hearts went to Melbourne, and the Bay City Union took their slot at the St. George Club. By now it's in a church hall, and it's got a great little following, and we always knew it wasn't going to last very long because of it being in a church hall. The parishioners every Sunday would have to wade through vodka bottles, the girls like that, whiskey bottles, beer bottles, broken beer bottles, cigarette butts all over the place, and the odd condom used. So the days at the St. George Club were numbered. Luckily, on the very last gig we did at the St. George Club, we were headhunted by the biggest gig in town, which was The Scene, which was owned by Ivan Damon. And Ivan Damon was Normie Rowe's manager, so whenever any of the big tours came into town, the Bay City Union would get to do the support. So we were doing quite well out of it. And we played Friday, Saturday and Sunday at the Scene. After about 3 months of being playing at the Scene, myself and Paul Johnson quit our jobs and became professional musicians. Now, I have to mention now Paul Johnson's job. Now, I was working at a place called Martirite Union, and which still goes. And Paul had a job at a place called Queensland Druggist. Now, if there was ever a beautiful meaning to never put the fox in charge of the hen house, this was it. Every Friday night, Paul's hand would go into the Purple Hearts jar, then into the Dexedrine jar, and then into the little white pills, never figured out what they were jar. And all the guys in the band had had a couple, and virtually everyone in the audience. So now we're professional. Our supplies have been cut off. And there was a co-worker with Paul by the name of Doc. These guys always seem to have a name like Doc. And he was selling them for 20 cents each. And I wasn't going to pay 20 cents for something I used to get for nothing. So that was my the end of my first little run-in with chemicals. So now we're professional. We start to write songs. And the first song we ever wrote together was a bit of a rip-off from Mystery Train, but you've got to start somewhere.
I said, train, train, bring my baby back to me. I said, train, train, bring my baby back to me. Well, you took my little darling and you left me in misery. I said, train, train, rolling round the track. I said, train, train, rolling round the track. Well, you took my little darling and you won't bring my baby back.
After about 6 months of playing the scene 3 nights a week, I quietly left the band. Now, Paul Johnson was one of the most charismatic people I have ever met. Little girls would run up and touch him and run away. He wasn't a good-looking man, but he just had a presence about him. And the only problem was, in a band situation, he was just impossible to get along with. So we were still friends, but I quietly left the band and went solo. So there was another band called the Escorts who worked at the scene, and they'd back all the people who came up from the south, and that was their job. So now they were backing me. Now they had 3 little girls called the Cookies. So we used to do some Ray Charles things like Hit the Road Jack, and I just play some blues songs, and so I was a featured artist. Now, after doing this for about a month, the guys from the Bay City Union came up and saw me and they said, "Matt, can you take over as lead singer? Paul is just driving us nuts. He's just uncontrollable. He just has to go." So I said, "Look, he's still, a great friend of mine. I better tell him." So I think it was every Wednesday we'd go to the scene and pick up our wages for the week. So I see Paul there, and I go up to him and I say, "Paul, look, I've got some bad news, mate. The guys in the band want me to take over as singer." Whack! He hits me. I'm 18, full of testosterone, and it's on. We're just laying into each other. And like most of these bash-a-thons, they end up on the floor wrestling around. And we caught each other's eye and just burst out laughing. It was just so silly. 2 people who respected each other so much. This was only band politics, and never really interfered with the friendship with Paul. And then Paul just looks at me and he says, "You can have the bastards." So that's how I became the lead singer of Bay City Union. Now, the idea with the Bay City Union wasn't really just to stick around Brisbane. We wanted to go down south and try it out with the big boys. But now I'm lead singer. I have to learn all the words to the songs, which I've never bothered to do. And a lot of the accents and everything, I couldn't understand what they were saying anyway. So I just write my own words. And in many ways, this led to a nice little interval between blues and OzBlues, where you get a traditional blues song and tell your own story with it. And here's one of them.
Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go down to New Orleans. Man, I love you so, baby, please don't go. Been to New Orleans, man, he been to New Orleans. I went to New Orleans back in '94. I saw two policemen wrestling on the floor. That was in New Orleans. Like New Orleans, Brisbane's like New Orleans. In the summertime it gets sweaty and hot. Sometimes a man don't know where or how to stop. I worked at Smith and Lane, that's in Brisbane town. Working late one night, turned on the radio. I heard this song, baby, please don't go. With my band named Sam, a band named Sam. I couldn't wait to get back home. Turn on the radio and hear that song again and again.